Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Yo to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, we feeling better? Huh? We feeling better as a fan base? All of a sudden, the Chargers making some pretty decently sized moves to address the interior of that offensive line. Welcome to the Chargers. Andre James, formerly of the Vegas Raiders, and the Chargers, man, dude, I don't know about you guys. I think all of us very anxious to address these positions, as a lot of us maybe blame, for the most part, the interior offensive line for that epic AFC wildcard matchup collapse. And now that we've got Mekhi Becton lined up next to Joe Alt, incredible run play potential behind those, what do we call it, Twin Peaks, these mountains, these two towers of offensive linemen on the right side. Now we've got this guy, Andre James, who I'm going to explain why was a great sign-up for the Chargers, is likely going to be your starting center this season. He is going to be an upgrade over Bradley Bozeman, and we got a lot of, size of reliefs to be had among us as the fans continue to see this roster construct itself for the draft for the upcoming season. We're going to do just that in this video today, too. We're going to make some remaining free agent moves to try and address some of the holes that I still think need to be addressed on the roster, as well as another mini mock draft for you fellas in the back that really want to see more mocks on the channel. Today's the day you're going to see it, man. Before we do jump into things, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Newcomers, take advantage of the offer on a screen. It's March Madness, baby. It's a great way to support my platform while having some fun along the way. Before we do kick things off, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's get into it, baby. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Okay, new plan. the next phase, the new plan. Of course, all of us had our eyes in the stars. We wanted DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, some other big free agent guys that were linked to the Chargers. Ultimately, we were kind of hit in the face by reality. The Chargers under Joe Hortiz are going to have a certain way of roster building, a certain way of I'm going to say depth building, man. The depth on this team. This may be the deepest Chargers team I've seen in a long time, and we ain't even done yet. And it's positioning ourselves for a beautiful concept in the draft that Chargers fans haven't really been able to enjoy. I would say the first time we kind of got to see it was last season, and the best player available. When you're able to cover this much ground in free agency and plug, this many holes, you can truly take, the player with the best talent on your board every single round. One of the most important moves that they could have made was center. Of course, a lot of Chargers fans, myself included, still in mock drafts. Okay, you guys, maybe spoiler alert for later, maybe not, but I'm still mocking, Tate Ratledge and Jared Wilson and is it Majors, from Texas. There's still guys that I think the Chargers need to take a shot on even after this signing. But I'll tell you what this signing does for me, man. I don't know if I'm sweating as much a first round offensive lineman. That doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't do it. I think 100%. If your top guy is still on the board, if it's Booker, if it's Zabel, get him. You know what I mean? But now having the flexibility and the sense of security with these signings of Mekhi Becton and now Andre James, you can do whatever you want. That's a very important power. This freedom in the NFL draft, man. I'm very excited to see how that goes down. You guys, stay tuned. We're going to do our own mock draft, seeing some of these moves now put into place. Let's talk a little bit about Andre James. Andre James, the man who's been, the subject of much conversation if you are a Vegas Raiders fan. There's been no shortage of Raiders fans hitting up my posts, hitting up Instagram and Twitter and all these platforms saying, you guys, you got yourself a garbage player, this and that. Dudes, that couldn't be further from the truth. And honestly, I'm seeing some of our own fandom a little bit too, a little hesitant as to the signing, given his PFF grade from last season. Of course, that does not look good on paper, but there is so much more going on behind the scenes for Andre James that just, simply cannot be known unless you dig a little bit deeper. And for those of you guys that don't know, last season with the Raiders was absolutely atrocious. This season, under this head coach experiment that ultimately failed, and these free agents that ultimately failed, and the draft outside of Brock Bowers, I don't know if I can tell you if that was successful. Just a very bad season for the Raiders as a whole, but in particular Andre James, who was kind of shoved into this new, world of zone blocking. You know what I mean? Like, they changed drastically in terms of what their offense was doing, up on the line from 2023 to 2024. And that, in my opinion, is where you're seeing this just dramatic fall off. Just a bad team in general. But on top of that, more importantly, this man wasn't, power running with the football anymore in terms of the offense. You're looking at a guy that, when given the ball, or given the opportunity to block for guys like Josh Jacobs in a system that was more man gap, in a system that was more power, did a very, very good job, as, evidence of his season just the year before. In that system, dude's kind of a dog. And you know what? They moved away from that season last year. Team was terrible. Offense was terrible. Everything was terrible. And of course, he fell off with them. But I have to believe that the Chargers are going to be that situation where you take Andre James, you say, hey, man, welcome back to man gap. Here's a Najee Harris. You're lining up next to, Mekhi Becton all of a sudden. And you got Alt, you got Slater on each side. Like, this line is popping all of a sudden. And who knows what this does for Zion Johnson, as well. I think all of a sudden, man, I'm feeling very solid about this line. I don't know if I'm expecting to see these numbers from Andre James, but I do feel like it's gonna be close in this system. Jim Harbaugh, the style of running this offense. Greg Roman, I think, deserves a little bit of a nod here too. Like, this is the perfect fit for what you're looking for. And even if he shows up and he's a little beneath average or above average or somewhere, in the middle of those five, players of like 15 or say 12 to like 17. If he's anywhere average, that's a huge upgrade to what we had last season in Bradley Bozeman, and gives me a lot of hope that this is going to be a good move for the Chargers. We don't know what the contract details are yet, but guys, I have a good feeling about this one, and I feel a heck of a lot better with how that offensive line is shaping up to be all of a sudden. All right. Next up, let's talk a little bit about how the work is not finished. The Chargers still have a ways to go. We need some more signings to free up that flexibility we were talking about in the draft, and it just so happens we got the money to do so. Again, I should have written it down somewhere. I'm not quite sure where we are in terms of money available to spend. I think it's still somewhere in the mid 40s. I think it's 40 to 60 million, somewhere around there. The Chargers have a heck of a lot of money to still play with in free agency if they wanted to tack more positions, which I fully expect them to do. I was asked, Director, what's your letter grade for the season on the Bolt Bros podcast a few days ago. I don't know if you guys caught that. And my answer to that was a C+, but with the expectation of it being closer to a B+. That's just because there's more work to be done, more signings that need to be had. And we're going to go ahead and simulate a little bit of that in today's show. What remaining moves could the Chargers make that would make me feel a little bit better about, going into the NFL draft and the roster as a whole and getting closer to that B+ grade that I'm hoping for at the end of the free agency, at the end of the offseason period. All right? So let's go ahead and move into the first guy I have the Chargers eyeing in terms of a free agent pickup. Now, I know tight end is going to be a big important position, a big important piece for this team going forward, and it's likely a position that they are heavily targeting in the draft. You've got maybe 3 rounds of solid opportunities to get a starter from this class, all the way up from, Tyler Warren, who's probably not going to be there. We don't even know if Colston Loveland's going to make us to 22, but then you got like Elijah Arroyo and Harold Fannin and Taylor. I think there's a whole lot of good tight end talent in this draft if that's the way you want to go looking for your starter. You're going to have to commit to that, and it limits your flexibility, but that is an option. Instead, what I would have the Chargers do is definitely grab a guy that doesn't interfere too much with what you're doing in the draft, but also simply covers your bases. And Tyler Conklin does check a lot of boxes for me. I will say that in this simulation or in this video, we're going to kind of go over one guy that I think if you're willing to spend a little bit more, if you're willing to dip into that, 40, 50, 60 million or whatever, a little bit more, this is the guy to go with. But I'm going to follow it up with the maybe cheaper option that doesn't interfere too much with the money and gives you more flexibility if you wanted to start a rookie in 2025. Okay, Tyler Conklin projected a 1-year, $8 million contract. It could end up being a little bit more expensive depending on the situation he goes to. I've seen it as high as like 3 years, average of $9 million or something like that. But I think in the terms of what the Chargers have been able to pull off, nobody saw the Najee Harris contract coming. I would expect something kind of similar for a player like Tyler Conklin on the Bolts roster. And this is a guy that, again, nothing flashy. He's not going to be, the Evan Ingrams of the world or the Mark Andrews, or still Dallas Goedert kind of on the table if you wanted to trade for him. That's certainly a trade that I would be behind if the Chargers wanted to talk to Philly about adding that pass-catching tight end. But this just covers your bases, and I think gives you a nice little baseline here. Nothing flashy, bread and butter player. He'll be there. He's got very secure hands, decent route runner, decent blocker. Across the board, just a nice football player. Nothing flashy, nothing crazy. But in the end, if the Chargers do decide to draft a player like Colston Loveland that takes over, early, this is still a nice depth piece to mix and match with Will Dissly or add to it or whatever, depending on situation. Tyler Conklin could be an awesome, stopgap, option mix with the whole rookie thing in 2025, and it's one that doesn't break the bank too much. Now, if you really want a nice budget option, something that's not going to break the bank at all, I'm talking like $1-2 million at most, you could probably look towards a familiar face in Gerald Everett. The Chargers brought back Mike Williams. Everybody's expecting Keenan Allen. Maybe the next reunion is, in fact, Gerald Everett. This is another, vertical tight end option that the Chargers are familiar with. Again, nothing crazy, but he'll be nice and cheap and fast and athletic and all the things that we know him to be as Chargers fans that watched him play with Justin Herbert a few years ago. Those are kind of the options for me at tight end. At this point, even if you sign one, both, either, whatever of these tight ends, I'm very much so looking to add talent in the draft, whether it be a first round, second round, third round, maybe even fourth round guy at some point makes their way onto the roster and helps this team, and helps this team round out that position, which is very important to Jim Harbaugh, before having to commit to what you're drafting in the draft. All right. So next up, let's take a look at the position of edge, man. This is one that very interesting, very important, and one that Chargers fans, I think, maybe it's flying under the radar with us a little bit because we do have some big players there already. We got back Khalil Mack. That's going to be a huge, addition for this team next season. Or I should say, sustainability of talent at this season for this team. You got Tuli Tuipulotu, who's going to be stepping into a much bigger role with Joey Bosa off of the roster. And then I think Bud Dupree still back there has a role with this team as well. But the Chargers have proven to me over and over again how much they value this position. You look at the first 2 years of Joe Ortiz, where he spent money, where has he made it work, where has he added talent where we already had a whole bunch to be, offer that. It's been edge. Edge is very evidently a big moving piece of this defense that Jesse Minter values, that, Ortiz values, and it's one that I think they're still going to add in free agency and in the draft probably. Now, Charles Omenihu, edge for the Kansas City Chiefs, is a free agent. Kind of interesting to see him out there, considering that, Kansas City just signed Jerry Tillery, the ultimate traitor, going over to the Kansas City Chiefs instead of re-signing this guy, who in my opinion is miles better in terms of what you're getting on that line. But this is the guy that you want if you want a premium edge 3, what the Chargers had last season. Mac Bosa Thule. If you still want that big three with a good rotation of Bud Dupree, you get yourselves a Charles Omenihu. I'm going to ruin it 20 different times in this video, who's logged 17 sacks over the last 3 seasons. He's only 27 years old and really fits the narrative of what the Chargers have been getting these past few months, right? The players that want to come in, add new life to their careers, give themselves premium opportunity to just shine and get a good follow-up contract in 2026. We've seen it with Najee Harris. You're seeing it all over the roster with guys last year and this year, and now guys like Poona Ford and Christian Fulton. All these guys are getting paid. Omenihu is going to be another guy that I really do feel would benefit from joining the Chargers. Gets to stick it to the Chiefs a couple of times a year while also being in a position where when he rotates in, man, he's really lining up next to some really talented players, that the Chargers are going to have at edge this year. So really like the fit. It's going to be a 1-year up to $10 million contract. You know how the Chargers like to utilize those incentives. And that adds another, again, really solid pass rusher to the rotation that keeps this premium position nice and consistent and attacking in waves. Now, if you want a budget option, I got another guy familiar with how the Chargers like to run their defense, and Tyus Bowser, who was formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, but most recently I think he was a Miami Dolphin. This is a guy that I believe very much so, like I was talking about with Omenihu, has that new life narrative firmly in his sights. He needs to go somewhere where he's going to reprove that he's one of those guys in the league and executes. If you take a look at his past couple of seasons, hasn't been too great. And the potential is still there, though. You take a look at his career, his previous 2 years in Baltimore, which is 2021 and 2022. He had 3 sacks, 8 sacks. The potential still lives in there somewhere, but he needs a new environment to come back and prove that. He's definitely not going to be one of those guys looking for big, contracts in the next couple of seasons, but he kind of wants to stay around, I would say. And maybe a 1-year prove-it deal with the Chargers could provide that, eligibility for himself for the next couple of years. So I don't know, man. He leaves plenty of room for a rookie signing as well, and he fills that gap for the Chargers, who are going to need some depth at edge now that Joey Bosa has departed. And lastly, one of these other older guys, man, I literally cannot believe that his name is still out there in the league. Calais Campbell. So they're 38, 39 years old going on here pretty soon, man. He's just not slowing down. I remember he was on a lot of my lists last season thinking, okay, this is the year he probably, falls off. This is the year that he finally slows down. And he went out there and did it again with Miami Dolphins, man. This dude is just insane. The ageless wonder. And he feels like he's good for, I'll be honest, man, between 5 and 7 sacks in this system. He's a great fit. He's played, with many teams that, have the systems and schemes that fit what the Chargers are doing. Of course, the Baltimore Ravens being in there for a few years too. He has mentioned that maybe he has slowed down a little bit, that his speed and agility and that kind of stuff isn't quite there anymore, but his brute strength, his size, his nastiness, that's still all there, man. And for my money, if you're looking for a player that provides more value for what he's projected, what is it, a $2 or $3 million contract over 1 year? Even at 38, I don't know if you're going to find him, man. So give me Calais Campbell on 1 year and give us that nastiness on that line that the Chargers are going to be needing now that Joey Bosa has parted ways. Now to round out the free agents, we need wide receiver. And Chargers, they have some options out there still. Now that we got Mike Williams in the building, I'm not quite as nervous as to what they need to do there. But I don't think the work is done. I think the wide receiver class, early, late, wherever you want to go, looks pretty decent this season. So you could definitely look there. And I think the Chargers should be flexing that option if a Tet McMillan is available at 22, or if they're really high on Matthew Golden or Igbeku or one of those guys in the first round. Awesome. But there's also some mid-round guys that look pretty decent to me too, man. And I want the Chargers to be able to do that without worrying too much about kicking a vet off the roster as much. And there's some signings that really do kind of help free that up. There's some signings that, if you're not quite as invested in this, class, or if you're not quite sure if they're going to be there, still give you decent options for 2025. And that's what we're going to roll with in the first free agent signing, and Stefon Diggs. We're going to give him a 1-year contract worth up to $16 million, which is quite a bit if you're looking at, comparing it to other contracts the Chargers have handed out this season. But this is a scenario where you feel like we need a number one to mix in with Ladd McConkey, and this would definitely be your 1B to Ladd McConkey's 1A in terms of, wide receiver hierarchy. But the biggest reason that I like Stefon Diggs, because, you're seeing a lot of toss-up between him and Amari Cooper, and some other names out there. The reason that he kind of wins out for me right now is his ability to play on the outside. Amari Cooper struggled a little bit with drops last season. He lines up in this slot quite a bit, and Stefon Diggs just feels a little bit more consistent at this point. They're going to cost around the same anyway. And so I'm just going to kind of give him the nod there. Is this a move that I'm making? Yeah, I think it definitely is in contention for me, but the way the Chargers have been building recently, I don't know, actually, if I go after a Stefon Diggs. I think, honestly, at this point, I'm still going to kind of ride the budget beast sort of, narrative and grab a Keenan Allen, if I'm being honest. Let's get Keenan Allen back on this team. You could probably get him for a contract similar to Mike Williams, which ended up being, like $5 million. There's some incentives sewn in there, too, to add a little bit more. That's probably what it would take to get Keenan back on the roster. His buddy Mike Williams is back with the team now, too. We know what he is. He can play inside. He can play outside. This is just a guy that, the Chargers be very wise to go out and get and wouldn't cost a whole lot of money. Whether or not that happens, if they're afraid of the age, if they're afraid of this or that, I don't know. But I did actually add one more option before we get into the mock draft, the mini mock, that I think is very intriguing. We've heard a lot about Keenan to the Chargers. We've heard a lot about Diggs and Cooper to the Chargers. One guy that, if we're looking for a bit more of a budget option, I think is a really good option is Elijah Moore. You guys remember there was this whole narrative of free Elijah Moore from the New York Jets back in the day. Not even that far back in the day. The dude's still pretty young. He's like 24 or 25 years old. He's incredibly athletic. He ran like a 4.3, a 4.32. Very, very fast. He's young. He's versatile. He can play inside. He can play outside. This is a guy that you can get for I'll assume between $2 and $4 million. And leaves a lot of room if you want to go ahead and bring a rookie in. If you get lucky, you get a nice player in the mid rounds like a Jack Besh or, maybe even an early round guy like, Matthew Golden. You're not sweating too much what the role of Elijah Moore is in terms of depth, but if you miss out or if you need help, I think you're kind of getting everything the Chargers are looking for outside of size and outside, physicality. You're getting the speed, you're getting the youth, you're getting the routes, you're getting the hands a little bit too. I feel like Elijah Moore, I don't know why he's flying so far under the radar, but he would be a fine depth piece for the Chargers. Who could definitely use, more speed on this roster. So definitely not too upset with all the free agent, options that are left on the table for the Chargers. It could have been a little bit more flashy had they been more active early on, but, you sign 2 or 3 of these guys, whether it be the more expensive or maybe even the more budget friendly, and all of a sudden this roster is looking very primed and ready for the NFL draft. We're going to wrap this video up with a mini mock. Of course, a lot of fans hoping for more mock drafts. Well, here is the next one for this team. We're going to go 4 rounds deep, and this is based off of my results of a PFF mock draft simulator session or whatever you want to call it. So in round 1, pick 22, I've got the Chargers selecting, surprise, surprise, Colston Loveland, tight end for the Michigan Wolverines. No surprise here. I think Chargers fans know what we're looking for. Even if you were to get, like I said at the top of the show, or at the top of the free agents, if you got Tyler Conklin or Gerald Everett, if Colston Loveland is there, which there's no guarantee, there's very many drafts that I've done where he's not available. The Broncos took him, or sometimes the Steelers. If Colston Loveland is not on the board, then, you still got a guy like Tyler Conklin to go after. But, if he's still there, There's no doubt in my mind that's going to be a very strong contention player for the Chargers to go out there and get pretty much their tight end one to pair with Justin Herbert for the foreseeable future. We're all going to be, on the edge of our seats waiting to see if Colston makes it to the Chargers at 22. We're all going to be on the edge of our seats hoping that, he's still available to us. Maybe even a small trade up would be warranted to go get this guy. He's just such a great fit, very athletic, the perfect vertical tight end talent that you're looking for right now. I'm all in on Colston Loveland if the Chargers can swing it and make it happen. And in this instance, he was available at 22. I feel very strongly that the Chargers are going to want to stick and pick more often than not. And if this is the result, I'm sure they would be very, very happy. So round one, pick 22. Forgot to update the number there. It's going to be your guy, Colston Loveland, tight end, Michigan Wolverines. All right. Next up, round 2, pick 55. I hope that's correct. I'm pretty sure it is. I'm going to go Chargers taking a running back in Caleb Johnson. Now, director, what are you doing? We just got Najee Harris. This is running back 1. He could get a contract with the team for the next 2 or 3 years. I understand that. And I don't think we're taking away from Najee Harris being, RB1 for this team. I think you're adding a nice 1-2 punch flavor for what the team wants to be in the future, and you give yourself something really lethal for this year. But I'm not passing up on what is, to me, a top running back in football, in the league option at pick 55 if he's still available. If Caleb Johnson is on the board, I'm going after him. And again, if he's not there, if the Chargers don't feel good about the remaining running backs, which feels very difficult to believe because it's such a good class, then Najee is your guy for the next season, maybe 2, maybe 3, who knows? But what I love about Caleb Johnson and his potential to pair up with Najee, maybe it's a little bit redundant to both of these guys. Extremely physical, extremely powerful, extremely violent. They're tackle breakers and hard yard earners and all the things that make a really nice running back in a power gap system. Or a man gap blocking, offense. It really feels like Caleb Johnson fits the future of what this team wants. You're going to get a really nasty, consistent run with him and Najee in the first year. And then maybe the torch gets passed. Maybe Najee Harris sees a really good season like J.K. Dobbins just did, earns a contract with a new team, and then passes the torch to our rookie running back in 2025. I can definitely see that happening as well. Either way, Caleb Johnson, too big of a talent for me to overlook. Sure, maybe he needs a little bit of work in terms of pass catching and as a third down back kind of guy. But outside of that, you could not ask for a better running back for this system. Caleb Johnson, it feels like he was handpicked for Jim Harbaugh, and these guys would have a lot of fun with him going forward. So 2 offensive picks in the first 2 rounds. You get your tight end, you get your running back, and you're looking like a Jim Harbaugh offense all of a sudden, very aggressively. What are the Chargers going to do in round 3? Well, we're going to find another offensive talent. It was really between him and I think another defensive line, maybe even an edge that I was looking at here. But Jalen Royals, with the way the Chargers wide receiver room looks now, let's say they do go for an Elijah Moore, right, in free agency. And that gives you guys like, Ladd McConkey, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, and, whoever, Darius Davis, et cetera. You're going to probably be looking to the draft to fill out some more positions there. Jalen Royals is a really good option for the Chargers specifically in round 3. This is a possession receiver, very sure hands, maybe not the best separator. A lot of things you could maybe say similar to like a Mike Williams or the receiver that was drafted to New England last year. I forget his name. Very similar in terms of, he's going to be more of a aggressive wide receiver, a physical wide receiver where you can throw to him. He can, fight and contest for the football, but more than anything, he is tough. This is a tough football player. Very strong, very good blocker, very good hands, all reliable. Really love the potential of him on this offense, serving, honestly, wide receiver too at some point. Mixing in Mike Williams on the outside, Quentin Johnston at Z. It really feels like a nice complement piece to tie everything together nice in a bow for the Chargers wide receiver room. So Jalen Royals from Utah State, certainly in contention for the Chargers, in my opinion, in round 3. And then finally, 4-round mock draft. We're going to wrap it up. I can't quit it, man. I promise you I'm going to do more research and get a better variety. But every time I see JJ Pegues's name in round 4, I'm like, it's an automatic draft for me, man. He is sick. He is so fun to watch. He's so physical, so dominant in the middle of that line, and also just so versatile. You can line him up anywhere. He played tight end at Auburn. He played fullback at Mississippi. He played, or at Ole Miss. He played. He scored like a big number, like 4 or 6 touchdowns or something like that, playing the fullback position. And we know how the Chargers like to run their defensive line. Fullback, hybrid players on their roster. He's the heir apparent to Scott Matlock. I love everything about this idea. I'm sure Jim Harbaugh would be so in love with the idea too. It is a solid, round 4 lock for me. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Let me know what you guys think of all these acquisitions, what you think the team is doing, and ultimately some moves that would help you feel very comfortable and confident going into the NFL draft. And please start leaving me some of your guys' prospects as well. I want to keep digging and getting into. I feel okay between rounds 1 and 3, but I would like to start building a bigger opinion and wider understanding of players, rounds 4 through 7 as well. So let me know some of your guys' gems. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up, stay frosty, and hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this content. Let's go out there, man. I do. The thought of Johnson, Caleb Johnson of the Chargers, future running back, pairing him up with Najee Harris this season, just absolutely filthy.